Welcome to the Learn to RV podcast, where we support, inspire, and empower you 1 mile at a time.
I'm Tasha.
I'm Jennifer.
My name's Jennifer.
Real life stories from real people living this gloriously messy lifestyle.
Real unfiltered moments of the RV life.
The realities of getting and staying on the road.
It's all going to be right here.
Hey there.
Welcome.
Welcome to the Learn to RV podcast,
where every mile is a lesson and every stop is an adventure. You're listening to the Learn to RV podcast, the podcast that keeps you rolling and inspired.
Welcome to the Learn to RV podcast. Today, we're talking about more than miles, finding your people. RV life is full of freedom, but it is the people who make it unforgettable. My name's Jen.
I'm Tasha.
And I'm Jennifer.
We're so glad to have you guys all here today. So, community on the road is a big deal. And I want to start with my story because this is what not to do if you go full time on the road. And so when we hit the road full time, we actually went a full 2 years before we came across our first full time family. It's not because we were recluses and we were only parking in the boondocks or anything like that. We were in the campgrounds. We were going to popular places. There were campers everywhere, families everywhere, but we were not intentional about meeting anybody. We were in groups, all of the Facebook groups and stuff. We just didn't make it a priority or go out of our way to say, hey, we're here, come meet us. We're a little shy in those regards and stuff. So it was the first 2 years, it was a little lonely, but we were also living in vacation mode. So we were still having the time of our lives. But by the end of that second year, we knew that we needed to do something. We just weren't sure what. And so sometimes, God or the universe or whatever you believe in has this funny way of making things happen for you. We were actually boondocking in Quartzsite, Arizona. And I was with my parents, and lo and behold, a little bit later that day, there's all of these RVs showing up next to us. I don't know how many, 20, 30, 40. And they were all families, like right next door. And later on that evening, I actually met our first full-time family, and it was Jennifer.
Well, I didn't realize that was your first experience, and I mean, yes. So in 2019, I ran an event for full-time families, and I insisted that it was a free meetup. And it was probably one of the only free meetups that full-time families has ever done. But we were in Quartzsite. It was like $40 to park there for 2 weeks. And I was like, no, we can handle, there should be no registration fee. Let's just meet up. Let's have a hangout. And
Right.
so the idea of hangouts back then was born off of this idea. Now they charge for hangouts because they do them at locations, but it was affordable. And so as people were passing through the area, the idea was that people could just come and go. So Frank was actually working the RV show at that event. And when he came home that night, we had pulled in 42 rigs on top of the 2 or 3 that were already there. And that's over 100 kids when you figure out families and dynamics at any given point. But it was a week-long event of just hanging out and getting to know each other. And it was a unique event because it wasn't like, well, we did some hikes and stuff. It wasn't like primarily everything that happened there happened at the site. So inviting
Very
other
casual.
families, very casual. And I think that's something that's lacking even in the RV community today, that the events and stuff a lot of times are so structured, even though you want to meet people, you don't have time to really connect with them. And so 42 is kind of like my max point for an RV rally personally, because I want to be able to meet everybody there. And so walking over to you, it made sense to me. Like, you had little people outside running around. I was, watching my little people run around the desert as we were parking these rigs. And we parked different. We parked in a circle, rally style, and we had people back in because we had people that wanted to move out partway through the week. And so I didn't want to park in rows like a campground. And so what was great was we could make that community fire pit at the end of the night. The teens had their own fire pit. They named it Lloyd. And there's still, if you go to Instagram today, there's still an Instagram for Lloyd is Hot. That is the teens fire from that event.
Yeah. It was a great experience. But definitely don't be me. Don't go 2 years before you start to make something happen. Tasha, I think you had a little bit of a different experience, quite the opposite
Yeah.
of what I did. How did you start out on the road with community?
Well, we didn't know anyone when we started, and we didn't know anybody living this life. And so when we got started, when we had been doing all of this research, we kind of stumbled upon some influencer videos on YouTube. And there was a group of influencers or an influencer community, I'll put it like that was getting together and they were going to be doing a rally in Florida. And I had joined the chat and had been talking to some of the people that were in there. And I was like, Matt, let's do this. Let's go meet these people that we've been talking to in the chat. And let's just, let's not start out alone. Let's just go do this. So we went to this rally and we got there and there were a lot of people. I have never viewed YouTube the way that my teenagers view YouTube. And so I didn't understand what I was entering into when I was like, let's go to this influencer rally. But we got there and it was just something I was not expecting or prepared for. But this community was amazing and they had done rallies for a couple years together. And they had started out small and grown, and they were just kind of doing life together on the road and kind of getting together every now and then. And I remember there were a couple of them that came up to us and they were like, "You're new." We were like, "Yeah, we're new." And they said, stick with us. We'll show you where all the good fires are. And, we're the crew that stays up late. We're the ones that hang out when everybody else has gone to bed. Like, you can come hang out with us. And we did. And we made some really, really good friends. We still meet up with them whenever our paths cross. They're amazing people. And they're all ages. And I don't think there was a single person there that was our kids' age at all. But the people who were there, they just like took our kids in and they loved our kids. And we joke that now like our kids have like 17 sets of grandparents because there were older adults that just like they just treat our kids like they're another set of grandkids that they have. And I don't know, it's just been amazing. And from there, we didn't have a set path to go. We weren't in our membership for Thousand Trails yet. We didn't really know like what campsite do we go to next? Where are we going to go next? And we were actually kind of bouncing back and forth between Arkansas and the road because Rosewood had braces. And so we used to say that like our dentist had us in braces jail. We had to keep going back after we'd go somewhere to get the braces checkup. Can we take them off yet?
Of
And
course.
so we went to the Grand Design Rally, and that's where we met Frank and Jenn, and they answered a ton of questions that we had. One of the people at the previous rally had said, you guys should do Escapees. It's great. So we joined Escapees, and then we got
Mm.
to Grand Design, and they told us, they answered questions about Thousand Trails, and they answered questions about some other different groups, and it just kind of set us down the right path. But we also made some really good friends that have been there along every bump and every road.
Well,
That's
and it's
definitely the
funny.
right way to do it.
Yeah.
Go ahead,
And
Jennifer.
it's funny because, back when I launched, it was 2013. The number of influencers wasn't out there. We actually entertained becoming influencers, and a year into it sat down with our kids and they didn't want us to be. And so we pulled back. So I only have like 1,500 followers on that on Narrow Road Schoolers because that was just not the path we chose at that point. But I mean, we spent 5 months without ever meeting another family. The first 5 months on the road. And it wasn't until we joined Thousand Trails that we would meet our first full-time family. And then that would change the trajectory for us. We would redirect and spend winter in Florida, and like it changed everything for us. But at the same time, at the end of that first winter, 13 families gathered around a campfire, far less than what was at that first rally I met Jenn at, and way far less than what Tasha was at when I met her. You know, the number of people just doing this wasn't the same back in 2013. So finding people was much harder back then. So you just said hi to everybody and you hope somebody said hi back.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, these days, I know for all three of us, we all have experience in both neighborhoods and the nomad community. In fact, that's probably the case for just about everybody on the road, except for our kids who maybe don't remember what it's like to be in a house.
That's true.
But let's talk a little bit about the comparisons and contrasts between neighborhoods and nomad community because it is quite a different atmosphere, but there are some similarities too. What would you say to that, Jennifer?
So we went back because we rented our house when we first hit the road. And so my kids all wanted to go back to California. So within that first year, we did end up going back to California after our first road school rally in 2014. We went back and visited, and my kids had a disconnect. And so what we found out was our kids changed. They had a bigger global view, and their friends had still lived in the same town and didn't understand that. And so 6 weeks after we arrived there, they were like, all right, let's go do this for a while. And so all of my kids, you know, my oldest was 13 when we launched. Well, my oldest that came with us, my oldest was 18 when we launched. One moved out, 6 came with us. But even him, when he was 14, was like, I have better friendships on the road than I have here. And so I think because you have to be intentional on the road, that you forge friendships faster, but at the same time, you have to be intentional about it. So at that point, I started reaching out to the families that we had connected with and said, hey, where are you spending fall? Where are you spending winter? And so we made every effort to get together. And what we would do is we would have these chats in Facebook Messenger. Thank goodness for social media. In some ways, it's great. But we would have these conversations and I would have conversations with the kids and let them know ahead of time. And some of my friends were like, nope, we're going to surprise the kids. And so, like, every family does it differently, but those connections become critical. But having those reservations match up is equally critical because it wouldn't be fun if I was in Florida this winter and we were on opposite schedules with these families. So we make every intentional effort to get the same dates or similar dates with those families, even if it's just a couple days apart.
Yeah, very true. What about you, Tasha? How would you compare neighborhood community to nomad community?
Well, I might have spoken about this before, but we lived in the same house for 9.5 years. And we lived on a street that ended in a cul-de-sac. And for the most part, our neighbors didn't change. We had a couple rentals on the street that changed, but our neighbors didn't change. There was only one house on the street that I knew the names of our neighbors, but that was only because their kids went to school with my kids and they would go out and play together sometimes. And that, I don't know how much of that has to do with like times changing or whatever, but I remember when I was younger, it was very different. It was everybody kind of knew everybody and everybody reached out to help everybody. And when you were looking for a resource for something, you went to a neighbor or you had an extended family nearby that you reached out to. And what I found when I became an adult was that I didn't really have that. I wasn't seeing that. But when I got on the road, that's where I experienced it, which was really surprising. I think in a way I kind of expected less of that when I got on the road. I thought that I would be fighting more isolation. I thought I would be finding
That's
myself
interesting.
feeling more alone, but I've felt more sincere connections on the road than I did in a house for 9.5 years, surrounded by people every day. That camaraderie that, oh, I see that you are trying to fix something on your rig. Is there anything that I can help with? We were at a campsite a couple months ago, and this lady just came over and was like, "Hey, I made some extra cookies. Just thought I'd bring them by and see if you guys wanted them. I made too many." Um, I remember when we lived on that street, it was our first Christmas there, and I was so excited to be there. I had made cinnamon rolls, and I had made extra cinnamon rolls for, like, our neighbors, our direct neighbors, and when I took them over, it was like they looked at me like I had just stepped out of a UFO. I mean, like, they thought I was there to, like, rob them or something, I don't know. I was like, "No, really? It's just a pan of cinnamon rolls?" And this woman just came over and she was it was like, "Oh, do you want can I pay you for these? Can I give you" She was like, "No, I just, made extra. I saw you guys out, thought maybe you might want some." And that I don't know, maybe it's because I grew up on Andy Griffith and I Love Lucy, and that's what I wanted my life to be like. I wanted that kind of camaraderie in a community, and I found that on the road. Um,
Yeah.
and I didn't find that in a
You're
sticks
not
and bricks.
Not wrong. I mean, I'll say that my story is a little similar. I mean, when I was a kid, yeah, everybody, all the neighborhood kids got together, got out and played. The parents socialized, you were
Yeah,
best friends with your neighbor. You needed a cup of sugar, a cup of flour, you'd go to your neighbor and get it. Like that was my neighborhood growing up. And then when we were living in a house, as each one of our kids was born, like, yeah, there was one neighbor who I knew the name of, and that was it, and
yeah,
we were in townhomes, so there was a ton of homes on a cul-de-sac. There was tons of places, and only one of them did we know.
yeah,
One difference, like when you're in a house and you're in an established community that's not moving around, you do have the option to maybe go and do things like a mom's group or, a toddler's play group or, go to the story time every week where you're seeing the same people there every week. And so for those people that are shy or introverted, they would see things like that as easier to build community, but you can also find those same opportunities on the road too. You just have to know where to look for them. So, what are some ways that you can find community on the road that you have found that has worked for you? And on that same note, I want you to also talk a little bit about maybe, especially you, Jennifer, because you've been on the road longest out of all of us. What worked for you back then and what works for you now? Because I'm pretty sure that it's different.
Sure. Yeah, so I'm going to circle back for just a second and say, with Frank being in the Marine Corps for 20 years, our house always changed. And so our first rig, we had lived in that longer than we'd lived in any one spot in the country. And we'd lived in that for 3 years. When we upgraded in 2016, we kept that rig and we still own it. We just aren't traveling in that one. That one just moved to Texas. But we were in that for 8 years and nobody wants to get rid of Wallace because that is the house they've lived in the longest. But
Yeah.
that being said, we were used to people ebbing and flowing out of our lives on a regular basis. So the military community is a lot like this. So I think for us, that's part of why this worked for us initially.
Okay.
And I wasn't just somebody that ever sat on the sidelines. We'd get to a new location. I'd join the homeschool group. If there wasn't one, I'd start one. Surprise. But I just don't sit on the sidelines well. I'm a leader by nature. And if somebody's not doing something, I'm going to pick up and do it. A friend of mine once said, to be a friend, you have to be friendly. So I work really hard at always being friendly to everyone, no matter what. And I think that on the road, your relationship with the community is based on where your location is. And so sometimes that community does have a lot of other traveling families. And other times, like you, that community can look very different with older couples because we've worked camped before and stuff like that. So I think it's different
Mhm.
and changing and evolving. I do think you have to be intentional. That's the big one. So I don't care what group you join them all. Seriously. If you have the money to pay for every membership, go join them all because
Yeah.
it's okay to have a membership to escapees and FRVA and full-time families and the Republic of
mhm,
Nomads. And gosh, there's so many. Honestly, that's just a handful of them that you could do. I'd love
Mhm.
for Learn to RV to have and host meetups someday down the road. I know that was Doug's vision originally with this. And so that may be something that somewhere down the line is something that can happen. I am a charter member of Full-Time Families. I'm number 36. So
Mhm.
I've been doing it a couple days and it started in 2010, but it's been through 3 owners and it's changed over the years in terms of how it works. But they have a family reunion every winter that sells out. And that may be a great way to meet people. But last year they had like 80 or 100 families. And that would have, I'm an extrovert, and that would have been even overwhelming for me. So I like the smaller gatherings, um, 10 to 25 rigs. 42 is kind of my max. But I have run kids camp at Bash. Escapers has a event that is out in Lake Havasu every year. That's a great event to go get connected. And there's activities for the kids and things to do. And the parents, I mean, if you don't want to go to your grandma's RV rally, that's a good one.
Mm-hmm.
Then FRVA is going to be more of an older crowd. I'd love to see that change. I'd love to open a chapter with Learn to RV and Road Schooling Resources at the helm of that. I'm actually going to be talking to someone this week that hopefully we can get that process started. But Road Schooling Resources, it's a free group. We own it with Learn to RV. And so there's a place for people to come in and connect right there. And so they don't have to have tons of money to join all the groups. There are ways to connect more organically. And there's lots of other ways too, but I'm sure we'll get there.
Yeah, for sure. So outside of rallies and groups, Tasha, what other ideas do you have for meeting people?
Um, gosh, well, this is not outside a rally or group. So I'm gonna break your rule, and then I'm gonna go back to I'm gonna follow the question. But
Okay.
one of the groups that I had the pleasure of um just gracefully falling into through the first rally that we went to, I got introduced to an amazing couple that I'm actually going to get to talk to for our, spoiler alert for our Thanksgiving episode. They work with Lippert Serve, and there are a lot of RV family based or RVer based give back to the community type groups. And the couple that I met at the first rally we went to, they are very integral to Lippert Serve, and they helped us get plugged into that. And so we have gone to some of their events, and you can, there are groups like that that will, when they're at a campsite, they will say, they'll put up flyers, or they'll get on Facebook or on the campsite's Facebook group and say, "Hey, we are coming together to cook some meals to take to the local food bank." Or we're coming together to put together some backpacks to take to local kids that are in need. If anybody wants to join us, we'll be in the clubhouse Saturday at 2. And they'll blast that out so that anybody who wants to come can join. And then if you have a mind or a heart for giving back to the community, you've just met up with your tribe. It's so easy.
Yeah.
So one of the ways that I recommend getting involved and finding your community is checking the Facebook groups of the campsites that you're going to, looking at the bulletin boards when you get to a campsite. If you know that you're going to be at a campsite, check out their event calendar in advance, because sometimes those types of groups will let the campsite know in advance, "Hey, we want to do this," and the campsite will put it on their event calendar for them. So you can find out before you even get there, and you can be planning. There was one event we went to, we gathered like toothbrushes and toilet paper, and we had like a whole thing in our underneath our bed in our bedroom. Like our storage space became what goes to the um you know to the giveaway stuff. um and we just, for a few weeks, we just, as we found things on sale, we grabbed them and put them under there and stored it, so that whenever it came time for that gathering, we had things and we just took them all out there. So there are ways that you can find your tribe that way, and that, I think, is such a important way, because, you know, in the same way that, like, there's the don't, don't leave a trace when you're like camping or whatever. I think it's also
Hmm.
important for us to remember to give back to the communities that we're in when we're camping. I think
Yep.
sometimes RVers get a bad
Agreed.
rep in the communities that we stop in, um, especially when we're camping in like smaller communities. Um, there's a there's a campsite in Georgia that we love, but their town is very, very small. And this campsite is very, very big. And when they were putting it in, the town actually was like up in arms about it because they thought this is going to bring in a bunch of nomadic, transient people and it's just going to destroy our town. And what ended up happening instead is the people who have been coming through this campsite have actually been pouring into the town. They've been pouring into the economy. They've been giving back
Yep.
to the community. And it's really like built up the town a lot. So I think sometimes it's just good to give back. It's good for our soul. It's good for their soul. So I don't know.
Absolutely.
I just got on a
And
It's
if
a great way
you're
to get
Sorry.
connected. That's okay.
and
Yes.
if you're a Christian on the road, there is a group called Gathering of Nomads. And a lot of times you'll see their signs and it says, "How can I pray for you?" And so they are a newer group that's just gotten
Mhm.
started. But if you're a believer and you are looking for community like that, they are mostly family oriented, but they are very biblically based. And so there are faith based groups out there that if that's what you're looking for too, there's also those. They're maybe a little bit harder to find. One of the things I tell you is that's why we created a Facebook group for the podcast. Ask your questions there. We are
Yeah.
all there
Yep.
and we have a lot of community that can help you get connected. And I think that's critical in finding longevity in this lifestyle because most people don't make it more than 18 months on the road. They don't
Mhm.
get connected. And that is most people, and so we've seen a tick of people go on the road and off the road and every 4 years there's a big surge of them. 2 years there's a decent surge of them because most
Mhm.
people have a bucket list and that's what they're coming out to see. So the
Yep.
fact that, we're sitting here, I mean, Tasha, you're still in that frame,
I know.
I mean, I don't think you're a quitter, but I know that, there's one of those things that there's any number of reasons that can take us off the road. And it's
Right.
sometimes not
Absolutely.
what we wanted. So, but getting connected is critical.
It
Yes.
is. It is. I want to talk about another way that a lot of people on the road could use to get connected. It's kind of different. It works well for me and my family actually. There's a lot of manufacturers out there. So we have an Alliance RV, okay? And in the Alliance community, we have these little alligators. We call them alligators. And so my kids love it, and we bought ourselves a set of alligators and I designed and attached a little card to it, introducing our family. And so anytime we see another Alliance in the campground, it's like, oh, let's get our alligator. And we go and we deliver it to them and we get to meet them. And sometimes it's nothing more than okay, thanks, goodbye. And other times we sit there and we talk for 2 or 3 hours, just because we have the connection of an Alliance together. And I know that there's other groups out there like Tiffin. What does Tiffin do, Jennifer?
So Tiffin does turtles, the Tiffin
Turtles.
turtles, and it's
Yes.
Is
about
this
getting
like the
their
Jeep
not
truck or the Jeep duck thing?
The Jeep
Yes, but
ducks.
this is
Yes.
this is more than that. So Alliance does alligator. We could do a whole podcast on this, but Alliance does alligators. Tiffin does turtles. Forest River does frogs, and so
Yes.
I mean those are the big ones. Grand Design, sorry Tasha, they don't seem to do anything big like that.
But
I'm here next week at the Grand Design rally though. I'll ask them if they
time to
have a
start
mascot.
something.
Yeah,
I
because that'd
will
be
tell
fun.
you, I have not seen a mascot, but I will tell you what they do. Um,
The clicky light.
well, the clicky lights are fun, but there have been some black Grand Design floor mats that Grand Design have
Yes.
they've
Yes.
handed those out in the past. And so if you've gone to a rally, you may have gotten some extra ones. And what I've seen happen are people will come up to other Grand Designs that they see at a campground that doesn't have one, and they'll take them a new one and just say like, welcome to the Grand Design family, and have a floor mat. So
Welcome to the family.
Yeah.
yeah, so I always thought that was really
I know the
cool.
Grand Design family is tight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah,
I know the
it's
Grand
just
Designers are
different.
tight.
But there's a secret one. So Grand Design, we got one because we attend enough Grand Design rallies as a vendor. But they have this light that you put in somewhere. I don't know. Frank does it. You put it
He
in
put
and it
ours
makes your
in.
lights flash at the rally. And
Yeah.
so, so it's just a fun little tool that, and you're sitting there and all the rigs are flat. It's silly, but it's
Yeah.
fun. But that's what camp life is about, right? So,
Mhm.
I mean,
Right.
it's like being part of the And there's no in and out club. That's the nice part about it is, if you own that brand, you're part of the club. So that's why brand rallies are fun. They may not be all
Yep.
the families, but they're fun.
This
Yeah,
is our
for sure,
first
for
year
sure.
not at the Grand Design Rally, and I'm
Oh,
genuinely bummed, like, that we're not
me too.
there. I've got some serious FOMO happening right now. But no, there is something to be said for rallies. My son's gonna kill me for saying this, but, we went to Bash. We followed we and Frank, we went to Bash. They were like, "You've gotta come, it's fantastic." That was, like, the first thing that I think Frank said when we were up on that roof.
That was
And
my first bash, just in case
yes,
you want to know. I'd never
it was
gone.
so great. And there are so many things where it's like every night is a different theme. Every day there's a different thing
Yep.
where so if you like to get involved in wacky kooky things, like Bash is your place to be, right? So it's been a hot minute since we've been to Bash. We didn't get to go to the last one because we were on the wrong side of the country. And so this last February, we were actually at Mardi Gras, which PS,
Mm.
there is family safe Mardi Gras. Just wanted to let people know because some people don't know that. I had a whole I may just say let's do a podcast on Mardi Gras because people just don't know. But we were at Mardi Gras
We have a sponsor we can
and
talk about for that one.
I love Mardi Gras. It's so fun. So we're there and my son is in the store and they sell like the most amazing costumes for Mardi Gras. And David said, "Mom, look at this jacket." And it is literally a full sequin jogging jacket. It's purple and gold and green. And it's like, it's just, it's something. And he was like, I need, I need this jacket. And if you know my son, you know that that's not his jam. He's a uh, basketball shorts, t-shirt kind of guy. And if I bring home a t-shirt that has anything on it, he's like, "Why did you get me a t-shirt that says something? Why can't you just bring me home a normal blue shirt?" Like he doesn't want it to say anything. So when he was like, "I need this jacket," I was like, "Who are you and where did my son go?" And he goes, "No,
So
I
did
need
you
it
buy
for
the
the next
jacket?
time." Yes, I did. It's in our camper. He said, "I need it for the next time we go to Bash." He had me buy this
Aw.
jacket for Bash. So we have this Mardi Gras sequin jacket hanging out because he is getting ready for the next time we make it to Bash. I mean, rallies are,
So I
they
vote
bring
this
you out
winter
of
we just
your,
do. Yeah, so this winter we all have to. I know the three of us will be parked somewhere together this winter. We'll have
yes,
to invite a whole bunch of people to do a lot crawl where we do like a
yes,
progressive dinner somewhere. We'll make it
yes.
a fun activity wherever we are.
Yes.
We have the
So that
tools to
David
do that.
has to wear
So,
that
Yes.
jacket.
yes, costumes required. RV Roofing Solutions is a nationwide RV roofing company with mobile installers.
One of the biggest factors and benefits of the RV Roofing Solutions system is our product is a low VOC, which is helpful for those who are sensitive to chemicals. It's better for the environment and it actually works better for the RV roofing industry.
It's a great place to find a quality product.
www.rvroofingsolutions.com.
So let's talk about let's kind of reverse the role a little bit because a part of this community and when we're on online groups and stuff, sometimes you actually meet the people online before you actually meet them in person. Like Tasha and I've never actually met in person before.
I
We've met
know.
digitally online and we're going to get to meet in real life later this winter, but that is
Yeah.
another way of making friends. There's another family that we have camped with several times, and she saw that we were in the Idaho area and she just reached out and PM'd me and she was like, "Hey, and how about we meet up? We both have kids similar in age. They had 6 kids, we had 4, and we met up and it was just kind of instantaneous, connection and everything." have you met any friends online first and then, camping later? And how did that work out?
I
Which
have.
one wants to go first?
I'm going to dive on in if that's okay. I feel like I'm talking so much, but here I go. So I have a couple of stories that I will make short, but the first one is I want to lead with this. Surprised me that I did this because when you're a parent and you're growing up with your kids in a world of technology and they're online, you're always like, you need to be careful about who you're talking to online. No, you are not going to meet
Right.
this random person that you've met online. And then I went RVing and I was like, I met these people online. Let's go camp with them. It's like, who are you? What has happened? But when we went, obviously when we went to that first rally, a lot of that was driven by the people we had met in that chat group. It was meeting Lori and meeting Marianne and, having conversations with the captain. If he's listening, he'll know who he is. Getting these people who, they got in and they were sharing tips with us before we even hit the road. And so it it felt like a safe space before we even knew them.
Mhm.
And then the other thing is on the Learn to RV site, we just did the amazing scavenger hunt that was so much fun in July. And it was
Yes.
so funny because Kathy in our group, she was talking to me. She put up there was a question about or a clue about board games. You had to go find board games. And we got to talking about a board game that we love. And we were like, you know that game? I know that game. We love that game. Meanwhile, there was another go find this thing. And she and Matt, my husband, were talking about that over here on the side. And so they were having a conversation and realized that we were in the same park. And we didn't know
Yep.
that we were sitting in the same park. And she didn't
That
realize.
happened to me too.
Yes, and then
Yep.
she didn't realize that we were married, and so she was having a conversation with me going, "We've gotta get in the same park so that we can have a board game day," and then I was like, "Oh my gosh, we are in the same park because you're talking to my husband over here," and we are. So we went and met them. We had board game night, and then while our RV was getting fixed, we invited them out to the Airbnb that we were at, and, we had dinner and did board games, and the kids hung out, and, um but that was another one of those, like, we met through the Learn to RV scavenger hunt, and
Yeah. I think all three of us actually met someone new
In
through
real
the
life.
scavenger
Yeah.
hunt in real
that's
life because I
awesome.
met Reem. She is in the same area as us in the summer, and she's going to be in the same area as us this winter too,
Oh,
actually. So
very
we've
cool.
already
Oh, that's
talked about
cool.
meeting up again this winter. And she came over to pick up her prizes and then she's like, "Oh, bring the kids over. We've got this stream right next to our campsite." And so we went over there a few days ago and the kids got to play in the creek and everything and we got to talk and we found out we had all these similarities and you just don't know. And Jennifer, who did you run into on the road from the scavenger
So,
hunt?
I mean, I've met a couple people actually, but it started with this person had posted their location for ice cream. And it was in the same town that Frank had left me in when he went off on this big long run with the boys this summer. And so I was like, huh, I wonder. And then I took a picture. Somebody said, I don't know what a Class Super C is. And so I went and took a picture with a Class Super C in the park, and we were at a KOA. And
Yeah.
so I noticed the next day there was another picture of that Super C the next morning before they pulled out. And this KOA was super busy. So, I mean, I got to meet people too, which was super fun that I wouldn't have gotten to meet any other way. We met Kathy.
Hmm.
Kathy's a unique experience because Kathy and her husband, Tim, Kathy's now come on as one of the writers for Learn to RV on occasion. That's not a paid position, but it's a fun
Nope.
position. You get to be
Yeah.
part of a community there. But Tim is now trained as a RV roofing solutions installer. And so like they're now chasing some jobs and making some extra money on the road. And, that's what it's all about, is finding those community connections, and they can be amazing and beautiful, and they can be messy and horrible all at the same time, but at least you have them, because, even when you're having a bad day, it's nice to have people that get that, and it's a safe space for
Absolutely.
you. So, I mean, the Learn to RV groups are a great place to connect. I'd love to see how we could make that work for regional areas and stuff like that, so people can know who's in their area. There are some
Yeah.
ideas in the pipeline of ways to do that coming soon. We just got to get the funding for it. And so it's just a matter of time.
Yep.
But we're going to have ways for you to connect that way. Virtually, the one thing I'd tell you is be safe about it.
Mhm.
And this is my rule.
Yep.
I make friends with people all the time online before I ever meet them in person, because of what I do and how I do it. But I do need to have at least one real friend in common with them in order for me to accept their friend request.
Mhm.
And I think that you have to go look at their profile and know that they're a real person, and, it's just being smart about it, right? You don't give them any personal information. We don't post our stories in real time. Even now, we're pre-recording these episodes. So, you
Mhm.
won't be where you are right now by the time this airs. And so
Right.
some of that is just being smart and proactive on the road. And so that's true of our travel schedule, except mine, because you can go to RV Roofing Solutions and see my entire travel schedule. But at the same
We're gonna
time, the
cut that
weeks that
out.
we're off,
No one needs to know that.
but I mean, the reality is you could follow us around. We just won't have time to hang out with you at those events, because we're pouring our heart and soul into those, because
Yes.
we're looking for new community all the time. One of the things that I've been able to do this year is host ladies only seminars. They're not scripted. They are much like this. They're just a conversation, and are never the same twice, because it depends on what you ask me as to what we're going to talk about. So sometimes we're talking about gear, sometimes we're talking about ladies driving, sometimes we're talking about why ladies don't want to drive, sometimes
Yep.
we're talking about how to get our husbands to pee in the toilet after they've had 5 beers. And so you have no way to know how that conversation's going to go, because I don't start those questions. So,
Right.
Right.
I was
That's
so
great.
bummed
That's great.
out because you were having one the day that we were getting ready to leave. I was like,
Oh,
and Matt said, I think that we can still make our schedule if you want to go hit that. And I was like, yay, but then I didn't know where to go and I missed it. I was so bummed out. So I'm excited
bummer.
because the next one that you do, I really want to go to it.
well, and that one we actually played bingo. So,
Ooh, I love
we used
bingo.
my knowledge of RVing, so you had to find somebody that was a left-hander, and you had to find somebody that had to hit all 50 states. And so when you won, when you yelled out bingo, I had 13 prizes. So they screamed bingo and I'd go 1, and scream bingo and I'd go 2. I just had to not lose track of which one I was giving out. And so,
Yep.
but the ladies all came to me the next day and they said, we've been at this rally for 3 days, and this is the first event where we had to interact with each other like this. So even at the
Wow.
rallies, they don't always know how to do stuff like that. And I think
Yeah.
that's 13 years of creating stuff for events that we've done, because
Mhm.
I have run rallies for almost all of the brands at this point. The only one I haven't done it with yet is FRVA, formerly FMCA. There you go.
Yeah.
But
A lot of acronyms.
it's an older crowd, and so
Yep.
it wasn't always. Like when FMCA started 65 years ago, people traveled with their families in the summer to the international rally with their families. What's
Yep.
happened over the years is it's become more of a retiree community. And I mean, I know for me, I would love to breathe some life back into that, because just alone the FMCA Assist program is a great way to have yourself covered on the road if something ever does happen that's terrible. You break a bone, you can't drive your rig, everything gets moved back. Clubs like that do have extra provisions that
Yes.
you can't do it their way.
Yeah. For
Jen,
sure.
before you move forward to your next question, and maybe
Yes.
you're going to cover it, I want to ask you a question, because you're a unique anomaly. You do a lot of work camping. So
Yes.
your community looks way different than ours. Now, I've work camped with the kids some, but it's for
Yep.
seasons and it's temporary. You've done it almost every year for the last how many years? 5, 6 years now?
Yeah. I think this is year 5 for us.
So what
And
does that look like for you?
So, it is a different community, and it's another way that we have adapted to being on the road and finding our community, since we aren't the type to necessarily go to 100-person rally, you know. So camp hosting, and I wasn't expecting to make community camp hosting, to be honest. When we signed up for our first camp hosting gig, the whole reason was to subsidize our income, to help with costs so we could sit still and not have to spend a lot of gas traveling around. And then our third reason was to really take in the region or the area that we were at, because we're going to be there for 3 or 5 months or whatever. And so we could really dive into adventuring, the area. But what I didn't expect was the community that was going to come along with it. On day one of our first camp hosting position, we met lots of people that would very quickly become lifelong friends of ours. And we're not talking families. We're not talking people our age. They are older generation people, because that is the typical age of work campers or camp hosts. But they welcomed us with open arms. They loved that we were doing this with our kids. They welcomed our kids. My kids have a lot of honorary grandparents now that everywhere we go, and several of them keep up with us even when we're not camp hosting with them. They will follow up with us and they'll say, how you doing, how's it going, or they have some news to share and they'll share it with me, and vice versa. And so it's been a really different way of building community, but it's been a really nice way of building community too. And on that note, I want to lead into my next point, and I wanted to talk just a little bit about, what are ways that you can keep in touch when you are scattered across the states, because you can make a friend and then you go different directions and you may not see that friend again for a year or 2 or 5. And, so I wanted to talk about that. And I mentioned it a little bit, how, they'll contact me and I'll contact them. And I will say that you got to be intentional. Everybody will agree to that. But one thing that I will do is I will not pour into someone who's not pouring into me. So if I want a relationship with someone, I will pour into them, expecting them to pour back into me, expecting them to stay in touch with me. But if for some reason they don't stay in touch with me, a lot of times then I'll back off, because I'll figure, well, they've got other friends or something. And then I'll just find that next person who I can pour into, who does pour back into me. And then, I kind of maintain that relationship. But on the other side of that, this other friend of mine, she's not an RVer, but she has come to see me several times in several locations that we've been, because she decides she's going to take a trip. And one of the first things she does is, where are you right now? And I'll be like, well, I'm over here. And she'll be like, it's on my way. And she'll stop and she'll make this special trip just to see me. And, we may not have talked for 6 months, but we pick up right where we leave off every single time too. So there's kind of two different aspects to that. Your distant friendships sometimes, got these great, unique characteristics to them. But what is some tips that you guys would say that helps keep you in touch with people as you're spread out across the states?
I use several different apps to keep in touch with some of my friends. So one of my friends, Nikki, she is not an RVer, but we have been friends. We've known each other since I was about 19. So we've known each other for a long time, pre-marriage, pre-babies, everything. And we use Marco Polo to talk to each other. So we send videos to each other. That has helped a lot over the years when Matt and I have moved, or, now that we're on the road, that helps a lot. I have a friend, Lucy, who lives in England, and we use WhatsApp because I can chat with her on WhatsApp. We can have phone calls, we can have text messages, and it doesn't cost anything more than if I was just using my telephone, which is really helpful. And so, I've known her for 8 years now, and that's how we've been able to keep in touch. And if it wasn't for WhatsApp, we'd be relying on things like Facebook, and I don't think it would be the same. There are social media apps that are helpful, but sometimes it's just, like
We
you were
use
saying,
one.
sometimes it's just being intentional with, hitting people up when you're in different areas. And I
Yep.
try really hard to build friendships that are like that, where if we're apart, it's okay because when we come back together, there's not like an expectation of the other one where
Yeah.
there's like hurt feelings that we were apart. We know we have an understanding that like
Right.
our lives are moving and we have responsibilities. And so, for example, if Nikki and I don't see each other or talk for a couple months and we come back together, we just pick up because we know that the other one is crazy busy.
What about you, Jennifer? What are some ways you have found to stay connected?
So I'm probably going to end up repeating something she said.
It's
I
okay.
mean, one of the things that we do is we have group messenger chats on Facebook. And so I have one that's called We Have Dogs. That's a 7-year-old chat. And the reason we had it is because it was two families that had dogs. So, we would go out and walk our dogs together. And so Matt and Kara are good friends of ours. It's one of those things where, we've maintained that friendship. Do we message each other all the time? I mean, yes and no. Sometimes it's just a meme popping through. I mean, sometimes it's just silly. It's not just about being intentional. It's about being actually it's more than intentional, because to keep those friendships alive and growing, Tasha and I have one where our husbands are both involved in that chat as well. And so we have dogs. We traveled with this family extensively. So we even have kids in that chat that are teenagers and adults, because they would be passing the messages on travel day to us. Hey, Matt and Kara got off at exit 69 to fuel up. They're going to be a couple hours behind us today. And so it was also a place where we could, have that extra community on travel days where we could, if we were traveling together. So I have travel chat groups that are 12 people, usually 4 or 5 couples max, just because, you want to know the people you're traveling with. I don't recommend group chats for rallies, and I know it's been done.
No.
The problem with that is you get into a group chat with 42 people, you have no idea who they are, and inadvertently something almost always goes wrong. So group chats are great, but I think that, those types of chats there's a place for them. Full-time Families does do, location specific chats for a lot of the parks that you're going to. That's great, but you have to be a member to be in them. There are still a lot of chats in those parks that are free. Through the Republic of Nomads and private groups. You just have to ask people. Some of us are in all of them. And so, because I do think that finding community should be accessible on the road. And so if you're going to a potluck and you notice the people next to you, there's 2 sites between you, ask them, hey, are you doing anything tonight? Just make sure we went to church for a lot of years, so I always bring enough for us and one more family. And so I always, have extra. And so I think that, taking the time to do that. I use Marco Polo sometimes. I thought it actually died out until this year, so I'm learning. But there's, you can email your friends. It's less personal that way. But, being intentional about finding that community, it's not easy. It's an extra effort on your part. And if you're willing to put in the time, somebody's willing to do it. The thing is, you said you don't invest in people that don't invest in you. I'm the crazy person that does it with everybody. So, it's not always reciprocated, but sometimes it's not about that for me. It's about connecting them to somebody that is the right person for them. And so, being a connector myself, that's, part of my equation. And so a lot of times I find that I'm just there for a season, and that the seasons sometimes change, and I just have to learn that that's okay on a regular basis. So sometimes I wish it was me, and then sometimes I, actually look back and go, you know what, this has happened for a reason, and that's okay.
Yep, absolutely. Well, thank you for joining us today, ladies. And I think the one thing that we can all kind of take away from this is everybody's community looks a little bit different, and that's okay. It's not about you fitting into someone else's community or someone else's way of life or anything else, but it's about you finding what works for you, finding your community, finding your road family. It's out there. You just have to take the first step. So if you liked us today, just be sure to like, subscribe, follow, share with your friends. All of that good stuff. And be sure to tune back in next week. Thanks.
That's a wrap for this episode. See you down the road. Make sure you subscribe, like, and leave us a review.